Good morning. In case anyone doesn't know me, I'm Izzy. I'm married to Ben, who most of you will probably know, and I've got a 4-year-old son called Solomon and a 3-year-old daughter called Juliet. Now, just to put this in context, when you get asked as a preacher to preach on love, it's basically like getting asked, could you preach on God, please? So I'm not going to be able to cover everything. I'm just going to say that in advance. But hopefully, in the short amount of time I've got, this is what we're going to focus on. We're focusing on our lack of love. That's the first thing. How to remain in God's love, as the John 15 passage was saying, and the choice to be a lover of God. Now we'll start and end with a tale of 2 siblings. Solomon, my 4-year-old, is getting quite competitive. I think he's taking after his father. And the kids do this thing where they get on their push-along cars and they go around this island that we've got in our kitchen, and they just go round and round and round, racing and racing and racing. Now, Sol, the other day, he was so intent on winning that he got off his car, threw it over Juliet's head in order to cross the finish line first. Now, at 4 years old, he is completely comfortable that if he wins and feels good, that the other person loses and feels bad. He's fine with that. He's absolutely content with that. In fact, in Solomon language, he has 3 positions in a race: winner, loser, and failer. So you don't want to come third, basically, in Solomon land. Winning is everything to him. Now, we find out that this competitive spirit is actually still alive in the Corinthian church. And if we're honest, it's alive in ourselves. And within our church today. And this beautiful passage that we see in 1 Corinthians 13, it actually comes sandwiched between 2 chapters that are talking about the spiritual gifts and how God's power is seen in the church today. But for some reason, whenever there's these gifts or shows of power, there's always arguments and complaints. And I think that's because spiritual gifts mixed with puffed up egos and human brokenness, they can easily become trophies, and they can easily promote the self rather than the spirit who is enabling them. It can become about winning and competition, unfortunately. But after Paul teaches us in 1 Corinthians 12 to eagerly desire the gifts for the common good, he ends with this: and yet I will show you the most excellent way. And then in 1 Corinthians 13 we have this beautiful passage. It's Paul explaining that even if we operate powerfully in the Spirit, even if we have the most amazing gifts, we're doing miracles, we give all that we have to the poor and even become martyrs, if we do not have love, we have nothing. We gain nothing. All of our righteous acts are like filthy rags. And the truth is, we're not so unlike toddlers. We struggle to prefer the needs of others because choosing ourselves feels good. We struggle to share because giving to others means that we have less. The countercultural way that Jesus tells us to live is really hard. When someone slaps you, turn the other cheek. The last shall be first, the first shall be last. Consider others more important than yourselves. That's not how the world works, is it? Dog eat dog world. No, this is the upside down kingdom. And if we're honest with ourselves, the church has lingering worldly ways. Jim talked last week about the disagreements in the church, the lack of unity. Sometimes we're still like toddlers. In 1 John 4, God's intolerance of this is put very plainly. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. Jesus says again in Matthew 7, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers.'" As Christians, we need a revival of love. I find that when I read about love, or God's distaste and his intolerance of our lack of love, I'm filled with holy fear. I see my lack, my shortcoming. Often I'm lacking in empathy, I'm indifferent to another's suffering, I'm self-absorbed and peacefully ignorant. I identify with what Jesus said in Matthew 24, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold." It goes on to say, "But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." Now, while I was planning this talk, I had one of those light bulb moments. I love these light bulb moments. And I realized that the remnant, those at the end of time who will go to be with Jesus, who stood firm in their faith to the end, it comes from the same root word as remaining. So, how do we make sure that our faith will stand the test of time so that we'll be the ones remaining in God forever? How do we remain in his love, as it says in the John 15 passage? Well, it says we obey his commands. His command is this: love each other as I have loved you. And that's not to say that if we sin, we fall from grace and depart from God's love forever. God's love remains. And we can't escape it. Actually, it's inescapable. He hunts us down. He pursues us. His love is constant for us. But it's of us who leave. We're like sheep that wander and go astray. For some reason, we struggle to remain in this love, this joy-complete, life-full, fruitful love of God. But then, how do we posture ourselves each day, each decision to remain in God's love? We've already ascertained that there's limits to human love, right? The John 15 passage even states the limits of human love, which is particularly pertinent on Remembrance Day. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And our John 15 passage states the limits of human love. But another passage in the Bible from Romans 5 tells us that humans might be willing to die for an upright person, but God shows his love for us in this. He died for us while we were still sinners. His love is limitless. And our only hope of glory, as ever, is Christ in us. His strength made perfect in our weakness. We love each other as he has loved us. We receive, we absorb, we read about, we meditate on, we learn, and we imitate his love. I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. What if that was a summary of our life's purpose? To grasp and to know and to be filled with the love of God. There's a story in the Bible that actually illustrates this really well as a life purpose. I'll just read it to you. It's about some siblings again. Mary and Martha. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister's left me all the work to do by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her." When was the last time you sat at Jesus' feet and listened to him? Do you read the Bible hungry to hear what God is saying to you? Are you attentive to God's voice in your life? I want to say this morning, be more Mary. But how are we going to get anything done if we just sat at Jesus' feet all day? I hear you cry. I'm probably naturally a Martha too. Busy, busy, busy. There's lots of needs in the world, all need to be met. But we hear a lot of messages from the front of church that appeal to Marthas. So I want to say it again. Be more Mary. When we're more Mary, we shift our focus from the doing or the works, the output, and we direct our attention solely on Jesus and loving him, worshipping him, enjoying him, listening to him. That's the input. And let me be clear, that doesn't mean that no work gets done. In fact, I think it might be the opposite. We all know that God's love is not inactive. It's productive, it's fruitful, it accomplishes a purpose. And the way of love is not inactive. We read in the 1 Corinthians 13 passage, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. These are not passive words. A love like that would act against injustice. It would tell other people about Jesus. It would serve people. It would endure through testing times. And I think we need to bear in mind that gospel story with Mary and Martha, we're seeing a snapshot. We're seeing a snapshot of Mary's life one afternoon when Jesus was present with her. But we don't see the life that she lived empowered by that love. And we don't see the potential burnout of Martha. You see, the difference between a Martha approach and a Mary approach is that the Martha way promotes good habits, outward change, behavior modification. It may be productive for a while, but the emphasis is on the self, self-worth, self-glory, and comparison. Martha felt good about what she was doing, and she criticized Mary. Whereas the Mary way, the better way, the way of love, it highlights devotion, inward change, purpose without comparison or distraction. And the way of love, it produces lasting fruit, as the John 15 passage said. And you see, that's the difference between a lover and a worker. Do you know, I give my employer a lot of my time, a lot of my effort, but there's clear boundaries of where my responsibilities end. And I'm mostly unwilling to do more than my job description, and more than that, it's not expected of me. But imagine a job where you're on call all day, you work long hours, and then you're on call all the way through the night. You can't take holidays unless you get cover, and it's unpaid. That's the life of a parent, isn't it? But it's love that compels us to give more to our children than to our employer. And it's the same with Jesus. It's the same with our faith. When we get to know Jesus and his love for us, and we fall in love with him, we are compelled by that love to prefer the needs of others, to live lives of service, and it produces lasting fruit and also the privilege of fullness of life with God. I want to end with these words from 1 John 4. I might even read them twice because I think they're amazing. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. Amen.